7:01. Let's call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Um, I think we've got the attendance. We think we've got all the people here we need. I know you had mentioned taking it out of order, but I think the order that it is in the agenda, don't we do the approval of minutes before we hear any of the budgets?
Yeah.
You can, yes, either or.
I mean, I think it'll go quick. I assume everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from the 11:16 meeting.
Yeah. I move we approve the 11:16 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Edward, seconded by Dan. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
You might have asked for discussion.
Oh, yeah, maybe I could have asked for discussion, but all right.
Well, Doug, this is your first rodeo, so we'll be kind to you.
Sadly, I think it's probably like my third or fourth that I've sat in on. I mean, I think I could be chairman and still not get this right for quite a while.
You're doing great.
Yeah, sure. All right, so motion carries unanimously. And so with that, I'll ask, is there anybody from the public who wants to participate in this fine discussion here?
Oh, you don't want to do the April 20th minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, we have to do, the deal. Oh, I didn't realize we had the April. I thought that was leftover. All right,
No, it was never voted on, never approved. So I'll move to
okay.
approve the April 20th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nothing. Again, motion carries unanimously. With that, let's get our public involved here. Is there anybody from the public here who wants to participate? Going once, going twice. So, all right. With that, let's, we are going to take the budgets out of order. We're going to go with recreation and then assessors and then council on aging, just because we have those folks here with us. So recreation, you want to kick it off, Dan? Kevin, do you want to kick it off? I don't know.
Actually, before we start,
Yeah, sure.
we did meet with the finance subcommittee last week. Steve and I met with Evan, Dawn, and Ed. So, Evan, do you want to just give a quick overview before we start, or?
Yeah, as usual, Kevin, I'll let you sort of, run through it. I don't know if you want to do what you did with us, or maybe even go a layer shallower and just address the ones that aren't level funded. We have a few that are level funded. You could probably skip unless there's objection to that. But again, this is sort of your it's like your spring game in college football. It's sort of your warm up here. These are pretty mundane budgets, but there's a few you'll notice that jump out at you. The COA being one of them. Youth, maybe you might have some questions about the assessor increase there. But for the most part, we had a robust discussion. I don't think the numbers will really jump out at you overall. Beyond that, Kevin, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. So we have 12 budgets tonight. We'll start off with recreation. And as I go through the budgets, I will point out there's like two or three items that are different this year that we'll bring up and we can discuss. Recreation, this budget, we're requesting an increase of $5,118 over the current fiscal year. This increase is all in personal services and is for contractual and negotiated increase. Dan McGrath, our recreation director, is online with us tonight. Dan is part of the supervisory union, so he follows their scale. We'll point out that the fees generated by the programs and activities that Dan puts on covers his salary. We take it from the programs and activities account, move that over into the general fund. The expense portion of the budget is funded out of the revolving account. Last year, we collected almost $600,000 in programs and activities. We spent $576,000 putting on the programs. The current balance in the revolving fund is approximately $117,000. And the total budget request for fiscal 25 is $130,814.
Just a quick question. There's somebody who's there on their iPhone. Who is that? Can they identify themselves?
Talking about me, Victor? Maybe?
Are you in two different spaces, Victor?
No.
It's not me. Said Brian.
I'm asking whoever it is. I just asked them to unmute. So just just in case.
The only way to know if it's Victor, Doug, is if he, gets off and gets back on again.
I can just put them in the waiting room.
Yeah, okay.
I have my sound on, so.
I'm not sure if that is following the Robert's Rules of Order.
I was going to say it's a public meeting. Can we do that?
I think they need to identify themselves, though.
Okay, all right.
Dan?
Yeah, I have a question on the supervisor's contract. So it looks like Victor's got I'm sorry, Victor. Dan's got a 4% increase in pay. So do we have a copy of the supervisor's contract? Do we know what the contract provides for everybody? Maybe that's a Kevin question or a Steve question.
Yeah, I think Steve went over when we settled the supervisory contract last year, that this would follow the regular steps and tracks involved with that union.
So what was the COLA for that contract?
I believe it was 2.5, but I think they maybe added a step.
Yes, I do recall something about an additional step. So probably 2.5 plus 1.5 because of longevity or step.
Step, probably, yes.
Probably step. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything else with any questions. This is as simple as budget as we get with no money.
Yep.
In terms of town outlay other than the personal services line item. All right.
We're all set with that one, Doug?
We are all set with that one. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for sticking around.
Have a great night.
Next budget is the assessors.
No, we have a question.
Oh, wait, Don, did you have a question for Dan?
Actually, I have a question for Kevin. So on the forms now, the recommended FY 2025 column will be filled with what the council approved.
That's correct.
And the council approved these budgets on Monday. Is that correct?
They approved them this 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Monday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Next budget is the assessors budget. We're recommending an increase to this budget of $8,951 for fiscal 25. There was an increase in personal services of $5,951. This increase includes contractually negotiated increase for the town's assessor in the supervisory personnel in his office. The clerical union has not been settled, so for a clerical union in this group of budgets, if there is a step increase due, we included the step increase, but there is no COLA added until the contract's been settled. We also have an effective change in the intermunicipal agreement for the shared services for Victor. We share Victor with Linfield and Reading. Linfield has agreed to a $12,000 increase for next year for Victor. So that's reflected both in his pay, but also in the reimbursement on the salary page of the budget. So it's a net zero effect for that increase. He is getting a 4% increase, which is contractual. There is an increase in under expenses under contractual services. The professional services line item is increased $3,000 due to a new requirement from the Department of Revenue on how Victor appraises the utilities here in town. Main expenses within this budget, the professional services line item, $21,600, which is used for outside appraisal services, outside personal property services, and also expert witnesses as needed for ATV cases. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $258,875.
Okay, questions? I think it was Dan and then Edward. Dan, you're muted.
Yeah. Somebody muted me.
I did.
Can't imagine who did that.
Well, you got a lot of background chatter there, so like, you know.
Oh, yeah, I've got some guests in the background. So I noted two large increases. Professional services went from 17.4 up to 21.6, a 16% increase. Evan, can you help me out with that one?
That's the professional services. Victor, if you want to tell Dan the new requirements.
The Department of Revenue changed requirements on appraisals for utility companies. Now our vendor has to provide us with a separate narrative appraisal. And I've been able to absorb most of the costs in my budget, but we needed to raise it a little bit to make sure we cover enough to pay for those appraisals. Other charge about $4,000 each for each appraisal. The firm, because we're a longstanding customer and now they do 3 towns with me, I do get it for a bargain basement price, and their appraisal comes with defense at the appellate tax board should we ever get that far.
Okay, good, thanks. And then my other question has to do with Victor's salary increases is over 10%. And the supervisor's contract was looking at more 4 or 5% increase. So can somebody help me out with understanding why, and not that I'm saying Victor's not worth it, but I'm just trying to understand the 10% increase in Victor's pay.
That's the majority of that's being picked up by
Linfield.
If you look at
that doesn't answer the question though, Kevin.
He's doing additional work for Linfield.
Additional work. Okay. That does answer the question. Okay. Thank you. I'm all set.
Edward and then Dennis.
Victor, who do you retain for personal property appraisals?
Real estate research consultants. Over 30 years business, and I've been a customer since my Chelsea days in the mid-90s.
And that's an expense worth doing, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my second question is not on this budget, but where do we stand on the overlay? I know there's a lot of development going on in town. I don't know if you're expecting further ATV cases or whatnot, where the overlay is going to be able to cover any potential liabilities.
During my tenure here, our overlay has been funded adequately enough, and we've never, ever come close to running into deficit.
Very good. That's good news. All right. Thank you very much.
Dennis?
Victor, what are the new changes for the utilities? Is it going to give us a better handle on the light department, seeing they're going to be coming up within the next year on their assessment? Where do we stand with trying to get a better handle on light department inventory in buildings and in infrastructure?
When I say utilities, the utilities I'm referring to are National Grid, Boston Gas, things of that nature, not the town of Wakefield. these narrative appraisals are required for, the taxable utilities, which would exclude our local light department.
So who comes up with the value of the MLD infrastructure in plant value?
Not me.
I think historically, Dennis, that the finance committee and the MLD had worked out the previous agreement. So I would assume that in that agreement, I'm not sure how long it runs. I know the last one ran for like at least 5 years.
Yeah, I don't think he's talking about the pilot though, Kevin. He's talking about the value of like how do we value their land, right, Dennis?
Yeah, their new plant that well, it's not new anymore, but the places they own in town, plus the value of their trucks, etc. And all their lines in town. Who comes up with that value?
Well, they have an annual report that's done every year. Like they have to publish.
Done by them. Who on our end looks at it and either goes with it or say, no, we want more or less? Who determines that value?
Well, it almost doesn't matter what they're valued at.
Aren't they exempt?
Yeah, it doesn't matter because they don't pay taxes to us. They just pay in lieu of taxes. And I'm confused. Like, yeah, like they're worth probably $100 million. We're not going to sell them because like but that's our only choice is like what are they valued at? And they do have an independent financial, like they have whatever it is, their annual report is not done by them. It's done by an independent accountant.
Right, they have an annual audit.
Yeah.
I'm not talking an audit. I'm talking the value of their equipment, etc., to come up with a in lieu of tax payment amount.
Oh, but that's not how they come up with their in lieu of tax payment amount.
It's part of the working out of that agreement as to how high it goes up. It can't stay the same only with inflation because they're adding plant. So Vic, do you understand what I'm asking about?
Yeah, but the main points are it's non-taxable town-owned utility. I have no role in establishing any value other than whatever the real estate and building values may be, as I would assign values to other tax-exempt properties such as schools and churches. But as far as establishing the value of the entity as a public utility, no.
All right, so you can set a value for their hard structure, their buildings that they own. And is that equal, or do you go over that against their report when they give their report to their auditor as to what he's setting for a value to see if we are within the same ballpark?
No, I'm not using their metrics. I'm
Right.
using metrics that I use for real estate transfers and real estate appraisals. I don't get into the valuation of the entire entity. It would be beyond my purview. However, if the town, did ask, I would attempt to do it. Or if the town wanted to pay to have an expert do it, it'd be pretty costly, but
Okay, I think I'm gonna have to let this go till Steve gets back and go over there with Steve as to how we're gonna come up with the next agreement as to what parameters we're gonna want to have satisfied other than an audit report that we had a problem with the last time. So okay.
Dennis, all I do know is that the last time the agreement was worked out, there was a group from the finance committee. I think Jim Sullivan was involved. I think there were a couple other individuals that met with the light department and went over the pilot program and what was going to be forthcoming to the town in the next few years.
Yeah, I was part of that, but that was before only the pilot program we were discussing. But all right, I'll go over that with Steve when he gets back. That's okay.
Okay.
Don and then Stefan.
Yes, I just have a quick question because the overlay account came up and I wanted to refresh my memory. Victor, didn't we return some money to the general fund last year from the overlay account?
Upon request from the town accountant, Kevin Gill, he asked us to take a look at our overlay and take a look at existing cases, determine how much we could release, and we were able to happily comply with his request.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Last year it was the amount was $600,000.
Yeah.
Ouch. Was
Okay.
that much?
Yes.
Kevin.
Stefan.
Hey guys, I just wanted to touch upon what Dennis was talking about earlier. I think what he was trying to get at was that if there's a valuation of all the at least the land of the municipal utility, that we would at least have sort of a denominator for a calculation of what their taxes to the town would be, if it was a taxable entity, and that would just give us sort of a sort of a baseline for calculating what a pilot could be, not what the pilot actually is today.
Can I in a little bit? That would give you the base for their potential real estate taxes if they were taxable. The real value in the entity is the services, the poles, the wires that they deliver. And that is something that, I've never been asked to do in almost 20 years here. And I would retain an expert outside to do it.
Well, I mean, also, if you look at the cost, like if you look at their annual report, they haven't published the year-end 2023. But yeah, I mean, their plant and like the structures are negligible. It's like six point land and land rights plus structures is about 6.8 for electric and about 2.5 for gas. So that's about 9,300,000. But their overall assets, their plants, their overall assets are about $100 million. So yeah, it's which do you tax them on? But more to the point, like how much are they making? It's more like, I feel like we should get our cut of the profits. And that's the big issue there. And that's, I think, Dennis's issue as well. But it's really figuring out what true depreciation is. And frankly, like at some point, we should get a valuation, but let's wait until they come in. Let's not grill Victor on things that he can't do. Were there any other questions for Victor? I think I have one, Victor, just in terms of with the way both we've seen interest rates rising and if the values of properties start to reflect higher rates, do you think you're going to get much pushback on, people having issues with their current assessment in all three of your towns, frankly, and not just us? But like, do you think there's going to be many more fights upcoming?
I'm surprised because we saw interest rates start climbing during last year, but we did not see a cooling of the real estate market.
No, nobody's selling, but yeah, that's the thing. But once people start to, you might see a sell-off.
Well, I haven't noticed so far in the process a whole bunch of abatement applications. When it comes to residential, it basically is, what's the value? Here's in Wakefield's case, my 200, 250 sales. So we establish value the same way. It's more sensitive when it comes to commercial property owners because the capitalization rate applied vis-a-vis the income approach, uh, it will creep up for next year. It's not going to go up 3-4%, which when you think it through would lower the value. But I have to recognize the increased cost of borrowing money in the capitalization rate.
Yeah, and then we don't have much office space here, so it's not getting hit on that, or retail, frankly. So yeah, I guess those were my questions. And how are you seeing it this year in terms of the abatement applications? Is it up from previous years?
Nope, pretty much the same. I usually get about 50 or so in Wakefield. That'd be about 35 residential. You're saying 15 commercial filers.
And then in terms of our change rate, like how often do they win?
Well, I tell folks, if you file an appeal, I have to come out and look at your house. Don't invite me in if you're hiding the Taj Mahal. Typically, the adjustments that we make might be conditional.
Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to.
Yeah, we may have overestimated a house. I might have your house listed as good and it's only average, and that's going to save you a little bit.
My house should have been burned out of the ground. Anyhow, all right. Well, thank you, Victor. Any other questions for Victor? All right. Thanks a ton.
You're welcome. Have a good night, folks.
Thanks, Victor.
Wait, he loses? Oh, Karen.
Yes, Karen Burke, Council on Aging. This was one of the budgets that had a larger than normal increase. We're recommending an increase to this budget for fiscal 25 of $29,504. There's an increase in personal services, $30,104, which is for contractual negotiated increases. Karen Burke, who follows the supervisory union. The social worker receives a 3% increase. The clerical position receives a step increase, no COLA because the contract hasn't been settled yet. There is a new request here for 16 hours a week for a part-time, or to make a part-time programs and activities person full-time. So that person is currently working 19 hours a week, is being paid for out of a grant. We're looking to add 16 hours a week, make that person full-time. We were able to reduce the van drivers a little bit based on usage. On the expense portion of the budget, we did have a small increase. Office supplies based on usage is $600. The total budget request for fiscal 25 is $288,193. We have Karen Burke again. She's the director up at the Council on Aging on the line here with us tonight if there's any specific questions.
Dan?
Yeah, so I'm just curious about guess what's her name? Maureen Howlett is being moved from part-time to full-time. Is this just a demand of services that we need to move this person to full-time employment?
Yes, this is actually seeking to bring us back to the staffing that we were at pre-COVID. Back in 2020-21, when the person who was in Maureen Howlett's position retired, the position was converted from full-time to part-time with the uncertainty of whether or not the seniors would come back to using the senior center once we are out of COVID. And the seniors have definitely come back. So we are incredibly busy and trying to manage it with significantly less staff. The only full-time person at the Council on Aging is myself. Marianne McPherson is full-time, but she has 12 hours a week that are dedicated to the veterans, and the other remaining hours are dedicated to Council on Aging. And then we have Maureen Howlett, who is just part-time. So when I looked at a capture of 2019 pre-COVID and 2023, the number of units of business that we're doing, the number of units in 2023 were 17,545. And in 2019, we were at 19,262. So that seems like, okay, there's a difference and we're less. The number directly correlates with exercise classes. Back pre-COVID, we'd have some exercise classes that would have 50 people. for instructor and participant safety, we're not allowed to have them jam-packed in the room like that anymore. So now we have to cap at 30 to 35 people. So that's where our difference is. But when I look at the number of programs that we average or that we offer weekly, the average is 40 programs now as opposed to 33 back in 2019. So we've expanded some programming and are really back to pre-COVID numbers and plus. So we'd just like to get the staffing back to be able to continue to support offering all of this programming.
All right, great. Thank you, Karen.
Any other questions for Karen? Oh, Evan and Ellie. Evan and then Ellie, sorry.
Yeah, no, actually, no questions, Karen. I just wanted to say I'll sort of repeat the sentiments I shared in the subcommittee meeting. I've seen, and I know it's just from listening to you talk, I know it's true of you and your department as well. But in my experience, you know, in municipal government, COAs and COA directors always just have this incredible talent to take a dollar and make it go. You know, we fund you to go a yard and you go a mile. And to hear sort of like, you know, it's always amazing to me to hear how thin staffing needs are. You know, how thin staffing is at a COA and how, you know, relatively low the budget is compared to some other departments and how far you make it go. And I think it's great work is all. And I think you do a great job, and you did a great presentation too at the town council meeting. So I just wanted to share that. And it sounds like, you know, look, on the finance committee front, whenever a department head comes to us and has, you know, in this case, you didn't get into the data yet, but you did a little bit, I think, at the town council meeting. But I know you're prepared to bring the data without us even asking to justify sort of the funding of this new, or I'll call it a replacement position, I guess. So I just want to say, you know, thanks and great work.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on the grant funding. Is that position still going to be partly grant funded, and how long does that funding last for?
Yes, so the position will continue to be funded 19 hours a week with the formula grant. So we're just asking for the 16 hours a week to be funded from the town budget. The formula grant is, it's in the middle of a 10-year contract. It's given every year from the state. It used to be every 2 years you had to resubmit your annual reports, but now it's a 10-year grant. But we submit an annual report to the state every year with our numbers and what we're doing and the new programming we're offering.
Thank you.
And the grant, I'm sorry, is based on the number of people who identify as being 60 and over on the census. So the latest census, we are at about 70,000, 7,100, or 7,700 or 7,100 that were identifying themselves as 60 and over in the town, and we get $14 per person. And we use that to pay for some activities, some exercise classes, different programs that we have to pay to bring in. In addition, we pay to mail our newsletters with formula grant money. We mail the newsletter 6 times a year.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, Karen, you know, I want to reiterate what Evan said, but also just a question. You mentioned units of business. What's the definition of units of business that you use?
I apologize. I should have said that. I'm battling a bad cold right now. I've been homesick all day, so I'm a little fuzzy. But the units are the number of activities in a participant. So we had 17,545 participants come in for various activities at the center.
Okay.
And that's for people who actually sign in. We do battle having people actually sign in for events without strong-arming them and saying you need to sign in. So sometimes, for example, we'll have 40 people that come to bingo and we've had 23 people sign in. So that's a bit of an underestimate for how many actually come, but those are the number who actually choose to use their card and sign in for the event that they're here for.
Okay, thanks.
And Karen, I had sort of one, and I think this probably might be for you, might be for Kevin, just in terms of the contractual services. It looks like, and I don't know if it's the vehicle or if it's the travel, if it's It's just like the actual expenditure is either at zero or has hit the number entirely. So for motor equipment maintenance that, none in 2023, and now we spent the full 2,000 that was budgeted. And it's like, it's always odd to see a number that is right on the nose unless.
So this year we haven't needed a lot of work in the two vehicles in the past few years. This year, both vehicles needed new tires and the van needed new brakes. So I used money from different lines in order to make up the deficit because not having spent it the past few years, and then we got hit with needing all the work done in both vehicles this year.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's fine. I think, Kevin, that's your call, like whether you'd rather that be done or just have hit it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, where it's that short money that we fit it in, the majority goes where it's supposed to go. That if there's a little bit of overage, I don't mind them going over on a line item as long as there's enough money in other line items to cover it. So I'm comfortable with the way they handle it.
Okay, great. That's it for me. Anyone else? All right, Kevin, your time to shine.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Karen. Sorry, I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next budget, the accounting budget. We're recommending an increase to this budget of $14,168 over the current fiscal year. This increase breaks down $13,624 coming from the tax levy and $540 coming from a water and sewer transfer. There's an increase in personal services, $11,624, which includes an increase from town accountant, myself, and a clerical step. Clerical union is not under contract currently. I will point out that there has been an adjustment for the non-represented town employees, which there are probably a dozen of us, where we don't follow a union contract. We do not have contracts. So in this budget, we are making an adjustment to longevity for longtime employees, for people that have 15 years of service with the town of Wakefield. There's a 2% bump for longevity. At 20 years, it goes to 4%. And at 25 years, it goes to 6%. There is an increase for contractual services under professional services line item, which is used for the town audit. We use a company, Powers and Sullivan. They're located up at the head of the lake. So they are local. Main expenses within this budget, $28,000 for equipment rental, which includes 7 copy machines and 2 high-speed printers. The accounting department pays the bills for the printing and printer and copy machine bills for the town council, accounting, benefits, tax collector, the building department, council on aging, and the treasurer's office. We also have a line item, $8,000 for postage, which is used to pay the accounts payable checks, and mail the accounts payable checks. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $490,152, with $467,074 coming from tax levy and $23,078 coming from a water and sewer transfer.
Dan, questions?
Yeah, so Kevin, my friend.
Yes.
So how many years have you been with us?
I have 32 years in, 22 years with the town of Wakefield.
So you got the 6% bump?
No,
for longevity?
4%.
Oh, 25 was 6%.
Correct.
Okay, so you got 4 plus a regular COLA, so that gets you the 6.8% bump. And this is an unfair question for you, but how much do town accountants make in terms of peers? Are you do you think you're in the middle of the pack? Are you above the pack, below the pack?
for ones that have 30+ years, I'd probably say, depending on the community, I've seen communities out there that are above me or have jobs posted for amounts above me. So I would say I'm probably on the upper end.
But not at the top.
No.
Okay. I have no complaints about your work, by the way. I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
But the total for the department comes in at just a little less than 3%, which is okay. But as I understand what you're saying is that two of your people, Jacqueline and Catherine, don't have any increase at all. So
correct.
Are they under a contract or a collective bargaining agreement that hasn't been negotiated and finalized yet?
That's correct. That
so why are we not some sort of number for them?
So is the thinking that that collective bargaining agreement will happen before a town meeting? And what kind of increase might we expect with that?
I know Steve is looking to hold and has held at the 2.5% COLAs for the unions. There have been other changes. The supervisory is one that got the longevity issue was kicked off there, that going with the 2% at 15 years, 4% at 20, and 6% at 25. So there are certain things besides the COLAs, but when I look at these budgets here tonight, that we have 12 budgets that we're going through. In total, they're up about 4.8%. Of that 4.8%, 2.8% is for budget increases, including salary increases. About 2% of it was because of the halftime position at the Council on Aging and the extra election in the election budget. So out of the 4.8%, a little more than half, or 2.8% of it, was because of salary and budget increases. 2% was for a couple of extra things that were in the budget this year.
Yeah. So I'm going to focus on the accounting department. So sure. Judy, Jacqueline, and Catherine are all due for some kind of increase when the clerical union negotiates and approves, and everybody approves their new contract.
Yep.
So instead of a 3.3% total increase on tax levy,
yep,
it's probably going to be closer to 4.5% or 5% when those contracts are negotiated and approved. Is that a fair estimate?
You're in the ballpark there, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so we really shouldn't be looking at this budget as being a 3% increase. It's going to be, a bit higher than that, maybe, 4.25, something like that, if we include all the clerical increases that are going to happen at some point. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, Phil?
Yeah, Kevin, can you just explain it again, the longevity? Is that a recent something for the supervisors union, I believe you call them? Is that a new thing in recent?
Yes, it is. It used to be a flat rate for most people.
Okay.
And now it's been adjusted to become a percentage at certain milestone years. The milestone years being 15, 20, and 25 years.
Okay, and this has been extended to people in your roles who are not part of any union or contract group? That's what you're saying also, right?
That's correct, because what tends to happen is that the non-represented employees, I being one, that the majority of the time you'll see we receive the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. There are no steps involved with our positions. There are no other, we don't get an educational incentive. We don't get certain things here or there. So it was something that we talked to Steve about, and Steve was in agreement.
Yeah. And the town council has obviously approved the budget. Did they approve this concept outside of it, or just, that was brought forward as part of the budget process?
I believe they've also agreed on that. Yes.
I know the school department has longevity. Is longevity in other towns a typical part? Maybe Ed could help with that. I mean, is that a typical benefit in other roles in other towns, or?
I've seen it in other towns. I worked at the city of Lynn, and the city of Lynn had similar. They had the 2, 4, and 6 at 15, 20, 25. They also went up to 30 years, which was an 8% increase, or an 8% bump.
Wow.
Yeah, Don, I've seen it too in other towns as well.
It's out there, and I think and I asked Steve about this during the subcommittee meeting, but this also has to be viewed as not only to reward longevity, but as a retention strategy, because in municipal government right now, there are a lot of vacancies, especially in the financial area. So if Kevin were to leave or retire, it would be a very, very difficult time hiring a replacement. If you go on the MMA website, you can see all the vacancies out there. So, it's either, longevity is being used, and rather than bringing in a firm to do a compensation study, which would probably cost about 50 grand or whatnot, this is a far more cost-effective way to meet that same end.
You said, Edward. Did you have another question, Ed? Okay.
All set, Doug. Thank you.
I guess my question around this is, and I think this is it's sort of going in, and we're going to continue talking about it. And now I know why Steve wanted to not be on this call, because it's I feel that we're doing it in a perverse way. It probably should I feel like it almost should be 6, 4, and 2 in reverse, that you should, again, once and Ed can talk about like how many vacancies there are, but somebody's been here 25 years, they're not going anywhere. They're not leaving. They don't ever leave. If you're here 25, you're going to be here 30. If you're here 25, you're going to retire from here. In education, in pretty much any job. Hell, I'm up on 20 at my bank now. It's looking increasingly likely that I'm going to retire from there. One hopes. So I just think that maybe the notion of, I think it's incentivizing, but almost incentivizing at the wrong time. Like, what you really want is somebody who's got 10 or 15 years, you want to make sure you keep them. You want to make sure you get them to be, now that they've been trained up, you want to make sure that you're continuing to be able to retain that person. The odds of needing to retain somebody to their 20, 25 years, not that high. It's rare for somebody to spend 20 years working someplace and then they decide that they want to go somewhere else. So I just think that's the perverse incentive around this. And I'm not, I hear you. You're here. This isn't about you. This was about whoever it showed up. And frankly, I have a bigger problem with this on the union side than I do on this. This is a side, your side of it is, you don't have the natural steps if you're not in that. So this is just another way of essentially giving you sort of the step bonus that is sort of buried into a lot of the other contracts. And I committed a cardinal sin there. I'm not sure I had a question there. I just had a rant. But yeah, I would think that this might be a different, this feels like, I think we probably as a committee have a bit of a beef with Steve of doing this without sort of broaching the subject with us at all first. But you know, he gets to dodge that bullet until a couple of weeks from now. What's our next one? Anybody else with questions for Kevin? Nope.
Next budget is the legal budget.
Yep.
This is Tom Mullen's budget. I'm sure you all know Tom. We're recommending that this budget be increased $7,633 over the current fiscal year. There is a increase in personal services, $3,833, which is for a 3% increase. There is also an increase in materials and supplies for the books and publication line item, $3,800, which is used to upkeep the town's legal library. As you can remember, in the past couple of years, we've overspent that budget when we've had to do small reserve fund transfers. So we're looking to bump that up to what it's been the past couple of years. Main expenses within this budget, outside professional services, $60,000, which is used mainly for labor attorneys and other expert services as needed. Past couple of years, or last year and current year to date, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had much activity in that line item. But it doesn't take much. It only takes one or two issues to expend that $60,000 or even overexpend it. So we've been very fortunate there. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $206,152.
Dennis, questions?
My proverbial question every year on the publication budget. I know we have a hard inventory of volumes for the legal library, and we also have the software package that basically all lawyers use. But our sub-agreement with the other town that Tommy works for, how is our legal library fees worked into that charge to the other community?
Dennis, all I can tell you is the town's legal library belongs to the town of Wakefield, and it's kept up, and it's always updated. And when and if Tom leaves, it's retained at the town of Wakefield. So he's upkeeping our records or our library.
That's the hard copy, Kevin. I'm talking about his use of the legal library to do his job as town counsel to Wakefield.
Yes.
That we're paying for.
Yes.
When he works for the other towns, that he's being compensated by them and they're compensating us for his services, how is that legal library being reimbursed for that time?
Tom is reimbursing the town a portion of that expense. He actually cuts a check. So when we mail out the check for that service, his check is included as part of that expense. So Tom is picking up that expense for other communities himself.
Okay, all right.
He is, yes.
Thank
you. Yep.
Any other questions around town council budget? So was he not eligible for the extended piece?
No, he was not part of the group.
Tax collector?
Tax collector's budget, we're recommending an increase in this budget for fiscal 25 of $7,382. This breaks down $7,363,000 to the tax levy and $19 for water and sewer transfer. There is an increase in personal services, $3,393, which is for a 3% increase for the tax collector. The clerical union, again, has not been settled. The clerical union employees are at top step right now, so it would be just the tax collector that would be receiving something there. Under contractual services, we increased printing and binding $1,220. The professional services line item $100, and postage $2,000, all due to increased costs. Materials and supplies, there was an increase of $650. Of that, $250 to office supplies, $400 to printing and reproduction supplies, all due to higher costs. Main expenses within this budget, $6,420 under printing and binding, which is for the printing of preliminary and actual tax bills. $4,850 for professional services, which are the instruments of taking during the tax title process. $36,500 for postage, which is used to mail approximately 67,000 bills. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $311,855, with $249,483 coming from the tax levy and $62,372 coming from a water and sewer transfer.
Go ahead, Dan.
So, Kevin, I'm curious. The transfer amount only went up 0.03%.
Right.
So why such a small increase when the budget went up 3%? Why wasn't the transfer going up a like amount?
The agreement that we had with the DPW, with the water and sewer department is being charged that amount. That's for that's to fund one of the positions in the tax collector's office, because the tax collector's office does the collections for water and sewer bills.
Oh, so until the contract, the bargaining unit agrees to a new contract, then that transfer amount won't change up until that point. And then it'll, in theory, it'll modify the transfer when you have a new contract, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions around that? Kevin, I think I just have one question. This is probably like the last time I'll ask this question, and it probably goes throughout. I think probably for the budgetary purposes, it feels like in the past when we were thinking about the schools or when we were thinking about anybody, you sort of put in a ballpark for where you think the increases are going to go. Like, even if the schools were working without a contract, if they had come into us with a flat salary item, we would have ripped their heads off. So on the clerical side, now I know it's not the most expensive, but this is another one where it's probably $4,000 understated because of the lack of
right.
So
right.
I think we should just I think you and Steve probably should have just reflected that across the board in terms of, and I don't know if you do it on the individual level or you just do it at the collective level, that we think it's going to be 2.5, and if it's higher than that, then we'd have to get more. But also, does the water and sewer department not pay for the overtime? So the overtime is not built in.
There's minimal overtime in there that I think we have 10,000, and I'm not sure if they use that full amount during the course of the year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I haven't seen. Okay. That's it from me. Is that another question, Dan, or is that?
Yeah. I was to follow up on your question, Doug. You raised a good one. So are we entertaining or thinking about any what's the size of the article for the clerical union that might come up in May? Have you guys come up with a ballpark figure for what that article might be in terms of dollars for the clerical union?
I have not. I'm not sure if Steve has. It's not one of the larger unions, so I don't think it's going to be extravagant.
Okay. Any other questions? Next budget up is we've done assessing town clerk.
Yes, the next three budgets, the town clerk's budget, the election and registration budget, and the election expense budget, pretty much all fall under our town clerk, Betsy Sharon. Betsy does a great job for us. On her budget, the town clerk's budget, we're recommending a budget increase of $7,386. The increase in personal services is $4,386, and is for a negotiated increase to the town clerk of 3%. Also includes step increases for the clerk positions, but the clerical union, again, is not under contract, so it will increase further. On the expense portion of the budget, we increased postage $2,500, and also increased office supplies $500. During an election year, those two line items do see quite a big bump, so that was the reasoning to up those two line items. Total budget request for 2025 is $259,479. And I do want to point out that they do collect funds over the counter for various licenses and permits. They average about $70,000 collections over the counter.
Did we have anybody who dropped off from the FinCom? I just took attendance based on what we had on now. I don't think anybody had dropped off.
Joe, come on.
See, Joe snuck in, so like we get, we take attendance at fifth period here apparently. So
well, hey, I had another meeting. What can I say?
Next budget item up is after that. It's our delightful budget.
Oh no, I'm on to election and registration.
Oh, okay. Oh, you didn't know you weren't finished. Sorry.
No, election and registration. We're recommending that this budget be increased $1,600 for fiscal 25. The expense portion of this budget, we increased postage by $1,500, decreased street list $400, increased office supplies $500 based on prior and current year usage. Main expenses within this budget: personal services $17,100, which is for the census workers. Under contractual services, under professional services, the line item is $12,000. We use a company called LHS. They help with the census mailing, the printing of the ballots, the maintenance on the voting machines. The postage line item, $9,000, which is used for absentee ballots. Again, this year is our fiscal 25 is the presidential election year, so that line item does see a lot of activity. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $42,300.
Stefan, questions?
Yeah, I think I might have asked this in prior years, but for the street lists, the printing of those, is that a requirement, or I guess could maybe a policy procedure change, require us to provide that, I guess, in a digital format as opposed
right,
to
that is what the town clerk is looking at now. She has been reducing the amount that she has been ordering, and I think she has continually over the past several years reduced that amount. And I think going forward, saying she's looking to reduce it, put it on the town's website, so if people want it, they can print out their own. So that is something that she's looking to hopefully either minimize or do away with altogether.
Great, thank you.
Doug, do you want me to just keep going on the election expense budget? Looks like Doug is frozen.
Am I back up now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just continue, Doug?
Yeah.
Okay. The election expense budget, we're requesting an increase to this budget of $13,000 over the current fiscal year. This increase is based on an increase in the number of elections. In fiscal 24, we've had two. We're going to have two elections: the presidential primary and the town election. In fiscal 25, we're going to have the state primary, the presidential, and the town elections. One additional elections. Each election costs approximately $13,000. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $40,350. I think we lost Doug.
I just had a quick question. So for the cost of election, $13K, is that just for the clerk's office and their portion of it? But is there also, in addition to that, other costs associated with detail duty?
So $19,200 is for the election workers. There's an $11,250 for advertising for the elections, and then also $9,900 for the setup and tear downs of the voting machines and booths at the election site. So it's really three components that make up the $40,000.
Okay, but there's also a mandatory police duty as well?
Yes, there is a, yes.
So, but that would be covered, or that would be covered out of the detail budget for the police department?
Yes. Correct.
Thank you.
I'm back. Am I squeaky as again?
No, you're good.
Oh, well. So is then now are we up to the FinCom budget, or?
Yes, we're up to the Finance Committee's budget. We are recommending level funding for fiscal 25. The two main expenses within this budget, cost to print the town's recommendation book for town meeting, $2,800, and under the dues and subscriptions and memberships, $3,600, which is the Finance Committee's portion to be part of the MMA. Total budget request is $7,060.
Could double it.
What'd you say? Cut it?
Any questions from anyone on this? I guess, is anyone going from either Finance Committee or from Town Council to the big MMA thing?
I am.
Okay.
I will say Steve usually goes, and there's usually at least a couple councils that will go.
I normally go. I haven't. I'm not registered, but I'll see.
The key part of the MMA conference will be the revenue forecast that the state presents. So Steve's going there as well as myself. I saw him there last year. We're going again this year.
Yeah, we send a contingent. We have a table there for the bank, but I don't work with that crew. All right, what's up next?
Planning board. Planning board budget, we are requesting a $2,200 decrease in this budget for fiscal 25. We decreased the books and publications $2,000. The planning board, Aaron Kokinder is no longer using the subscription to CoStar Realty, which they use to gauge the property here in Wakefield against other communities. We also decreased dues and subscriptions $200 based on usage. Main expenses within this budget, the cost of the clerk, $4,800. They schedule 2 meetings a month, $200 a meeting. Advertising line item, $3,000, which is used to advertise their meeting and any bylaw changes they may have. We do collect some revenue within this department. Over the past couple of years, it ranges from $5,000 to $10,000 a year. Total budget request for fiscal 25 is $10,775.
Any questions? None.
Last budget is the Board of Appeals budget. We are recommending that this budget be increased, or actually level funded for our fiscal 25. Main expenses within this budget is for their cost of their meetings. They have advertising costs. They do pay their clerk, their board, their chairman, and members get a small stipend per hearing. We estimate a cost of each hearing at $600, and we budget 50 hearings a year. Historically, this budget does pay for itself. In fiscal 21, we collected $6,000. In 22, it was $18,000. Fiscal 23, it was $35,000. Approximately $15,000 year to date. The total budget request for fiscal 25 is $30,300. I do want to point out that the difference between the revenue collected for 21 and 22, 21 we collected $66,000 and 22 it was 18. That a lot of times when people do file with the Board of Appeals, they pay the money up front and then the hearings can drag out. So a lot of money came in, but a lot of the hearings for some of the projects from 21 came and happened in 22.
Question, Dan?
Yeah, Kevin, I'm looking at the numbers and I guess I'm a little surprised that you level funded at 30,300 because through the first 26 weeks, we're spending 16.4.
Yep.
And if they continue that pattern, they're going to end up at roughly at 33,000. And looking at previous years, you're at 40,000 and 38,000.
Yep.
So why aren't we at roughly 32 or 33,000 for fiscal year 25?
I'm thinking it's going to start slowing down. That a lot of the bigger projects that we have online right now have gone through this process. So I see myself personally, I think the activity is going to slow down a little bit. Not stop, but slow down.
So have we done reserve fund transfers to cover those costs above their budget?
Yes.
Past?
Yes.
But yeah, if you look, there's 3 of them in there, 2 of them in there.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, though, again, the revenue does come in on the other side to cover it. But to your point, I just see that it seems like to me that they are slowing down somewhat.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the case going for 25. I mean, that's a long ways away from now. Interest rates are starting to drop a bit. I expect more activity because already the Fed has said we're going to drop 3 reductions of 25 bips each is on the horizon. I gotta believe we're going to be doing another reserve fund transfer in 25 if we keep with 30,300.
We'll see about that.
Yeah, we'll see.
Another side bet going. Ray,
Yeah.
can you make me co-host or make me host? Can you switch over? When I got bumped out, it made you host. You're wearing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there
Okay.
you go.
All right, hold on.
He is the head.
I just have a feeling that Kevin you'll
All
be
right,
coming
just
back to us in 25 for a $3,000 or $4,000 reserve fund transfer. Of course, there's nothing tiny, so I'm not going to make any deal out of this. I'm just thinking that this budget's probably a little bit too low.
With the new zoning as far as along the MBTA corridor, that may push up some more development for apartments that no one's thinking of right now. So I think we should really look at that number again.
Okay. Any other questions on the ZBA budget? Hearing none, do we have committee comments? Any committee comments from anyone? Nope. All right. Well, I think we're all set.
I'll move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Uh-oh, hold on, I got. All right, so Dan seconded, Bill motioned. All in favor?
Aye.
I might point out that the meeting is not Monday the 25th, it's a Thursday the 25th. There's a typo on the agenda.
Uh-oh, see, there you go. The minutes were wrong. All right. We'll catch that and I'll send that off to Sherry as well.
Okay, actually, Doug, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So as subcommittee members on the various budgets and stuff, are we all required to produce minutes of our meetings with
Yes.
And so, you know, should that be shared with us before we attend the subsequent meeting? Evan, I'm putting you on the spot. Did you do minutes of your meetings related to the town budgets?
No, I think Steve doesn't.
Okay, so like I do the police department, I do minutes, and you know, I don't know if they're helpful to people to share them before, but if we're getting lax in that process, I think we should all do it.
I do it.
Yeah. And not only minutes, but you also have to make sure you post it, you know, 4 or 5 days in advance.
Yeah.
So you need both.
Sherry does that.
Both
Yeah,
minutes
right,
and posting.
Meetings. Yeah. Anyway,
Dan,
thank you.
Dan Lieber will be after you.
We don't want that.
Well, if he comes after us twice, he has to join the board. So,
no, and you don't want that. Okay, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
All right, good night.